But at the last moment, at when you're alone in the evening, that life doesn't resonate. And that's the place that I call spiritual starvation. That you know that this is not how you were meant to be on this planet. You know that this is not the thing that you were meant to do. You weren't meant to party 24 hours a day. You weren't meant to try to snort all the coke that you can get up your nose. You're not meant to take over other countries just because I've got the power to take over other countries now. That having a spiritual hunger is not only okay, but I think it's necessary. It's like when you're experiencing hunger, it's like, oh wow, I need to get fed. Now I need to find something appropriate to feed me, something that's going to be nutritious, satisfying, fulfilling, etc. Experiencing spiritual starvation is not knowing how to be fed. It's having a spiritual yearning and trying to stuff more stuff after it to try to satisfy that yearning. In my life, I didn't know how to satisfy the spiritual yearnings that I had even as like a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. And I was trying to go to the church. I was raised as an Episcopalian, and the church was not answering some basic questions of how human beings are supposed to be living their lives. It's like, how can the church have these golden candlesticks and these golden goblets and this wonderful building, and there are homeless people in the world? And the church has never, and it doesn't matter what church, what faith, whether what denomination or anything like that, they don't answer those basic questions. And so I found myself at 12 years old turning to alcohol. Someone said that alcohol was the mystical experience of the ignorant. So at 12 years old, I was yearning for a mystical experience, and I was very ignorant. I was a full-blown alcoholic by 14 or 15, and by 17, I had to give up alcohol completely because I had a bleeding ulcer. So I made a switch over into drugs because it's much better for your stomach. And finally came to my own personal crossroads where I realized I had to either get deeper into this or get away from it completely. Deeper into it was, and I was in my sophomore year of college, when I was seriously contemplating buying a one-way ticket to Hong Kong, going into an opium den and never coming out again. Doing away with it completely meant going on a spiritual path, going on a path where none of that mattered anymore. None of where I realized I didn't need drugs to get high. I didn't need drugs to find the transcendent. And in the world of parallel universes where, and there's this theory that every time you come to a major junction point in your life, a major nexus point where you make a decision, there's an alternative Sharif that made a different decision. So there's a universe where there is a Sharif that got on an airplane and went to Hong Kong and died in an opium den. It's a pretty sad universe. And I'm glad that I am experiencing this one. So the challenge is, how do we live a fulfilling life? How do we live a life of enough? How do we live that life of enoughness in the context of a world that must rapidly transform? So I know a lot of my friends who say, I live a very decent life. I drive a small car. I live in a small apartment. I recycle aggressively. I I live a decent life, and so I'm just going to continue to live my life, and I'll just not worry about anything else. I don't think we can do that. I don't think that we have the luxury of doing that. This is saying, I'm making sure that all around me in my boat, there are no holes and there are no fires lit. And I see people at that end of the lifeboat. And I see that they're drilling holes and starting fires, but I'm not going to worry about them. I'm going to let them take care of themselves. I'm going to work on my part of the boat here. We're in one boat. This is one relatively small planet. And if enough holes get drilled in it, then life isn't tenable for anyone. It's not that it's not tenable for the people who are drilling the holes. It's not tenable for anyone. So what we have to do, and I believe that we have both a practical and a spiritual calling to do, is to live our lives as though each one of us mattered, and to live our lives in such a way that each one of us is seen as a necessary and integral part of the whole. And once we do that, I believe that new answers are going to come up from the, going to just kind of boil up from the creativity that comes from all of us living fulfilled lives and working as hard as we possibly can to make sure that that world of fulfillment exists for all other beings on the planet. Not all other human beings, all other beings. And when we do that, I think that we'll be seeing ourselves living in a fundamentally different world. Some years ago, I read a book that really affected me. I read a lot of books that really affect me, but this one really stuck with me. And this was called In the Footsteps of Gandhi by Catherine Ingram. And in this, she detailed the lives of a number of people, I think something like 20 people, who were trying to live their lives and do the work that Gandhi left behind. And some of the people were, quite, we know quite well, Martin Luther King, etc. But there's one guy who was on the island of Sri Lanka named A.T. Aryaratne. And I remember reading his bio, reading his story, and thinking to myself, this is somebody I really need to meet. When I got the notice that he was coming to America, I got on an airplane, and I think it was in Minnesota. And when I got there, I had no expectation that I would actually, have a conversation with him. And when I arrived in the hall, they were setting up the chairs, and there was people setting up, and him, and me. And so we wound up talking, and we haven't stopped talking yet. One of the last things he said to me during this visit was, if you're ever in Asia, come see me. So 6 months later, I found myself on an airplane going to Sri Lanka. He gave me 2 or 3 days to get over jet lag and put me to work, and I've been working ever since. The organization that he created is called Sarvodaya. It's a phenomenal organization. In fact, it's probably not really an organization. I've never seen anything like this before on the planet. Sarvodaya is Sanskrit for the awakening of all. And the theory is, if you're not working for the betterment of your community, you're just simply asleep, and you should wake up. So, and eventually it leads from a personal awakening to a community awakening to a family awakening to a national awakening to finally the awakening of the entire planet.